遇见有趣的灵魂，活出真实的自己。大家好，欢迎来到谈心社，让我们一起谈心、谈情、谈音乐。Welcome to Generous Talk, an intercultural conversation on music, health, and lifestyle. Enjoy. Hi everyone, this is Xingyu, and today I'm so happy to have dear Karen Wacks on the podcast. Hello, Karen.
Hello, happy to be here.
So I'm gonna give a brief introduction of how I met Karen and all the story kind of lead up to today. And this is also, when I share in the community, share with people who sign up to be here as live audience. Some members are very interested in how we met. So we met, and remember first, it was my first semester at Berkeley. And because I went to Berkeley very specifically for jazz and music therapy. So from the first semester, I was very much involved in all the extracurricular activities available. So remember, I went to music therapy symposium. There was Passage conference for students and young professionals, and there was masterclass with musicians. Karen, you invited from Africa, and I just sat there. I was like, wow, immersed in all those possibilities. I think that was the first time I kind of met you, meet you, that kind of. And also with first semester, I remember I asked Kathleen if I could sit in the senior class, which was music and medicine, because I want to know what was the top of the training of the music therapy program. And then the spring semester, it was 2015 spring, I took your introduction to international music therapy class. And I now still can remember all the wow moments in the class, constantly had those wow moments in those 2-hour class every week. In those class, we dig deep into the literature, we work together in groups and create presentations. And each week, you also brought in those wonderful guests from, they have variety of approaches from different cultures, perspectives. There's a very strong sense of inclusion and open discussion in all those sessions. I think all of these stayed with me. And I would say these experiences really influence how I design workshops, course, and training today.
Wow.
So very thank you for all the design and curation. And I feel like, as I was preparing the interview today, I feel in some way the podcast I'm doing and all the guest interviews is an embodiment of that.
Wow.
And yes.
Yeah.
And also thank you for your continuous support in my journey then to become a music therapist, but also I feel not just a music therapist, but also really unleash my potential as an entrepreneur. How you really share with me all those great events that, I had a connection and led me to Abu Dhabi. That trips is so life transformative, and I feel that has an impact of why and I'm doing what I'm doing now, creating startup, creating all those new programs, and be a trailblazer here, and all the potential as a human being and an educator. So it's really an honor to have you here today to share your perspective on music therapy, music, and life in all of that.
Wow, very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, no, it's an honor for me to be here today and share my work. I am been a music therapist for quite a number of years, and it's incredibly inspiring and satisfying to pass this work on to other people because the world is changing, and so is music having more impact on the way that we live every day. And so it's wonderful to be here and to share some of the insight that I've had, some of the history that got me to where I am today. Yeah, so thank you for inviting me.
I can't wait to hear all the history leading to the now and the future.
It's long, but hopefully it'll give some insight to others. Yeah.
So how about we start with a music introduction? So is there a music or song that could summarize your relationship with music?
Wow. Well, I'm a French horn player as well as a keyboard player as a performing artist. But that's a big question. And I thought I would just start with a song that I start my sessions with to bring people into the music. There's so many choices of music that represent who I am as a person and where I've been and where I'm going. But this is a song. It's just a simple song, and it's called "I Want to Sing, I Want to Shout All Day Long," and it goes like this: I want to sing, sing, sing. I want to shout, shout, shout. I want to sing. I want to shout all day long. Sign language. When my friends are by my side, I feel happy deep inside. I want to sing. I want to shout all day long. A little bit faster. Will you help me? I want to sing, sing, sing. I want to shout, shout, shout. I want to sing. I want to shout all day long. When my friends are by my side, I feel happy deep inside. I want to sing. I want to shout all day long. So that's just a simple song that kind of grounds me and grounds other people. And no matter what community or population I'm working with, it brings people in because it's simple, it's repetitive, it's all the components and elements of music that make it so engaging. So, and plus it's the American Sign Language, so it's inclusive. So if people are not able to sing and just want to listen or just use their hands or movements, it's another song that works that way. So yeah, that's. But in terms of my own music, I'm classically trained as a French horn player, and I've been playing the keyboard as part of my work and just part of my own enjoyment. And playing in the band when I lived in Alaska, I played in a bluegrass band and played keyboard. And yeah, music is what keeps me balanced and keeps me alive. So yeah.
Oh. So what was your journey like going into the field of music therapy?
Yeah. So when I started music therapy, there weren't that many colleges or universities. And I was at that point in my life where I wasn't really sure early on what I wanted to do. I knew that I grew up in a musical family. My parents played music, my brothers played music, and music was important, but I didn't know I would follow it as a vocation. So I started in social work in a college in Boston, and then ended up eventually finding music therapy. I played in orchestras, youth orchestras, and different kinds of performing groups. But as a training, I finally found Helen Bonney, who is a pioneer of music therapy, the guided imagery in music. And she became my teacher. I lived in Washington, D.C., and was my mentor. And she was quite the pioneer of using do your listeners, are they familiar with Helen Bonney? Should I talk a little bit about Helen's work?
I think talking a little bit, like explain a little bit would be
So
helpful. I
guided
think there are,
imagery, yeah, so guided imagery in music is a little bit different than using music for relaxation. It's actually using music, programmed music that was systematized to help people reach altered states of consciousness and go back into deep states of awareness. And she was working with Vietnam vets, and she was working with people who had traumatic experiences. And through guiding and psychotherapy, she would bring people into the here and now and be able to access their memories in a way that was safe and contained, rather than sometimes music can bring us into deep, dark places. But they were always guided, and it was a training program. But my training was not in guided imagery. She was my mentor just in terms of stepping into music therapy, and that was at Catholic University in Washington, D.C. And I was working at the time in a public school in Fairfax County, Virginia, and I was hired as a music therapist. And I then was using music with individuals with intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, and it became something that was my teacher. The students became my teacher. So Helen was there to supervise, and I was there to learn. And after a couple of years in Virginia, I moved to Boston, and I went to Harvard University and got my graduate degree in counseling and psych, and I'm a licensed board certified music therapist, as well as a licensed mental health counselor. And from Harvard, it was more theoretical than practical, but I was also working at the time at the Community Music Center of Boston as the
yay,
director of
we're
music
also
therapy, and began developing different kinds of music therapy programs. So on the ground floor, there weren't as many options as for music therapists. The primary focus was children with disabilities and elders with dementia, Alzheimer's. And then as the field grew, it's now everybody and can benefit from music. And I'm not saying people weren't benefiting. It was just not, the research wasn't as great, and it was the research that really brought us into the next century of and evolution of music therapy. But as a musician, I always found that it was so important to keep myself balanced by playing with other people and in orchestras. And I think that's what also led me to music therapy, was I saw the power of music to change people and bring people together. And yeah, very, very powerful work. So, and today I still play music, not so much French horn, but more keyboard. I play in a band up here where I live in north of Boston. So it's fun just to play music and keep myself balanced. So that's part of my journey, but that's my personal journey. And then professionally, it led into, I think going to Harvard really opened the door for me, in people gave me a lot more credibility. Somehow going to a prestigious school, there was a trust factor. I think that's what happens when you go to schools like that. They immediately believe you know what you're talking about. So that kind of, that credential was very useful and helpful for me. But I believe that any college, and it's not just Harvard, it was just that I learned more theoretical aspects of counseling and psych, and understood how people function. And yeah.
Then how was that journey kind of led into like Berkeley, and then because when I went to Boston in 2014, I saw like it was a large variety of programs. Like we're literally working with anybody, and we had faculties from different music, like has multiple like has expertise in multiple approach, and everybody work together and have conversation about the different approach and the pros and cons and how to integrate them together. It was, I feel like it's such like it's flourishing, and
Yeah.
how so you witnessed that, like you
Yeah.
were involved in the whole process of like
Yeah.
growing the field and developing so many new programs, and
How did
I
that
would love
happen?
to hear that.
um, uh, uh, let's see if I can go back into my memory in the 1980s. I was part of an organization that we founded called the Massachusetts Music Therapy Alliance. And these were just a handful of music therapists. That's how you start any kind of collaborative kind of community experiences, that you find other people of like mind. So there were maybe just about 15 music therapists in the Boston area that were practicing in nursing homes and schools, some psych hospitals. And we realized that there wasn't a position in the state of Massachusetts to hire music therapists. They were being put into occupational therapy, speech therapy, recreation therapy, but nothing that said music therapy. So we went to our state legislature and worked with our senators and created a civil service position called music therapy. And from there, it was a groundswell and a grassroots
Mm,
kind of effort to get music therapy on the map in Massachusetts. And so I became the director of music therapy at the Community Music Center of Boston, which is a nonprofit community music school that not just did music therapy, but did lessons, music education. And now that organization has actually grown. But from working at the Community Music Center and working in the community, developing programs with facilities that had funding. I mean, that's always the issue is how do you pay for this kind of thing? And so
mm,
there was also at the time, the Ryan White Care Act, which was individuals with HIV and AIDS were dealing, it was Elton John was involved. There was a lot of publicity about AIDS at the time. And they found that music therapy was something that was also very powerful in music in helping people heal. And when I say heal, that's a loaded word.
I know.
But help people, bring people together, help people find their humanity. And also the mind-body connection was also coming together, where people were looking at the effects of music on the mind and the mind on
Mm,
music, and how powerful and integrated that became. So what was happening was Berkeley was also starting at the time, was exploring starting a music therapy program. And this was in the 90s, so the sort of the mid 90s. Dr. Suzanne Hanser was hired to begin developing a curriculum. And I was brought on part-time as a instructor to start teaching music therapy, and at the same time to develop practicum programs around the Boston area. So I would say Berkeley had a real strong influence on expanding music therapy. And as the
mhm,
program grew, and as more and more music therapists were out there in the world, then it became obvious that we needed to provide training programs for our students. So we were able to hire new music therapists to start programs in, again, community centers, schools, hospitals. It just kind of blossomed. And
mhm.
Boston Children's Hospital was one of our
Yeah.
first practicum experiences, which still exists today. But
Mhm,
in terms of the diversity of approaches, as the Lee Burke, who was president of Berkeley at the time, said in order for the program to be viable, because a lot of music therapy programs start and then they die because there just isn't
mm,
enough interest, and there just isn't enough, I guess, tuition or something to support it.
mm.
He said we need at least 50 to 100 students to be part of the program. We started with 8 initially, and now I think we're probably up to about 120, 150 students. So the
Yes.
program is flourishing today. So again, and then Dr. Hanser was able to bring in different individuals with diversity of background, diversity of approaches. And Dr. Colin Lee was one of our first instructors as well, full-time, and he was very much into music-centered music therapy. And I think that's what continues today, is Berklee is known for the music and being able to be grounded in improvisation. And but not all music therapy is improvisation. It's not the only way to do music therapy. I want to just mention that there are many different approaches. So Kimberly Kerr is still with us. She was one of the original faculty members who came in.
Yes, she's so rock and roll.
So rock and roll. She's doing wonderful work in the world. Donna Chadwick, Kimberly Kerr, Peggy Cotting, Kathleen Howland, of course. So again, it just kind of evolved into, and as the program grew, and as Dr. Hanser left, and we have a new chair who's not so new anymore. She's been there 6 years. Dr. Joy Allen has now taken us in another direction, which is very evidence-based music therapy, really looking at grounding music therapy into research and evidence, and still music-centered, but how can you be at Berklee and not be music-centered is the way that I say it. But that's the approach. And again, I'm just kind of rambling on, but what set Berklee apart from other colleges was the international student body and the opportunities, and as well as the technology. Technology became something that was really quite important in beginning to use technology in music therapy. I'm not sure I answered the question, but that's sort of a little bit of the history. And I'm still at Berklee today. I'm now adjunct. I'm not full-time anymore. As I'm aging, I'm needing to spend more time with my family, and but still continue to stay connected to Berklee. So I'm still there.
So what do you see, like, from, like, with your decades of experience, like, see this development and the trend, and where do you see, like, music therapy is growing, like, as a field, like the future, like, of music therapy? What do you see?
Well, personally, I think about community music therapy because of the power of music. I see more and more opportunities, and I don't want to say less clinical, but more community-based, where larger groups of people are embracing the power of music for empowerment, for where there's so much conflict in the world. It brings people together. Music is the glue that you might have differences. And I see that some of my work brought me to Africa with the Musicians for World Harmony. If I can speak about that right now, is this a good time to bring that up?
Just got back from South Africa.
Africa, that was 2008. One of our students, Amanda Maestro Shear, had traveled with an organization called Musicians for World Harmony, which still exists today. And Samate Mulando, who is the executive director, is someone who said, can you bring some Berklee students to Kenya and work with children with HIV, children who were homeless, orphans. And so with Amanda leading the student body, we organized a trip with 8 Berklee music therapy students to Africa. And from there, we went and worked and met recording artists. We recorded music, we did songwriting, we did percussion, we did dancing, because in Africa, you don't do music without moving. So dancing and moving is really key. And so we learned all about how to use music from a cultural perspective. We were students as well as teachers. So that was, I think, always what makes a good relationship. It's a balance. We were there to learn as well as to teach and to give and to take. And that was such a successful experience, I went back 2 years later and worked with groups again and then Samate invited me back in 2013 to go to Uganda and work with child soldiers who had been kidnapped by Kony. And that's the extreme, I think, in terms of music therapy, where young children in northern Uganda were being kidnapped and recruited as soldiers. And by the time we got there, and I think it was 2013 or 14, Kony was gone, but the aftermath of and the trauma that these children had experienced, they were coming back into their communities, and it was very challenging for them to be accepted by the communities, because at the time they were burning villages, killing people, and so these villages did not want these children. So Samate and I went, Samate as a performer, me as a music therapist, worked together with an organization in Lira, and we worked with an organization that helped children reintegrate back into society. And it was there that I saw through music that people were able to let go of their differences, to let go of their anger, to really embrace these children, because it wasn't their fault. They were children. And so they were, and again, it sounds very ideal, and there's so many different issues and problems, but that was the sort of the foundation of what we were looking to do, was to really help process. And you can't solve trauma in just, we were there for 2 weeks, you can't do that, but at least it opened up possibilities. Plus we trained counselors there to use music in healing ways. They don't use the word therapy in Africa, but healing is definitely something that is more culturally acceptable. And again, for me as a white middle-aged woman coming into this community, I learned about cultural humility. I can't really step into somebody else's shoes because that's not my experience, but I was there not as the expert, but also in partnership with them, learning from them, learning their music, and then sharing what I could share. So it was a very powerful experience. So you asked me, where is music therapy going? I do see music therapy as a way to bring people together, and music therapists, actually, whether it's natural disasters, earthquakes, or tsunamis, or tornadoes, or war. We see it a lot. COVID, refugees. Music has a way of tapping into the humanity of each of us, and I think that when it's designed systematically, it can really make a big difference. And I'm not saying that regular musicians can't have an impact, because in this country, we're looking at Taylor Swift and the impact that Taylor Swift is having across the country in terms of bringing people joyful, lifting up spirits. But but it really has a way of connecting people to others. And I think that that's the power of music. As a trained music therapist, you need to be able to tap into, you need to develop your intuition, and also have training on how music can be helpful. We've now been looking at how music can be harmful, and I'm not sure if you have been familiar with that. That we just assume you put on music and it's going to help people, but that's not the case. The wrong music can actually have harmful effects, and there's all this literature now that's coming out about, and that's where being a music therapist, I think, is really helpful. It's a consciousness, it's an awareness, it's a thoughtfulness about how to use music in ways that are productive and helpful.
So you talk about the concept between like therapy and healing. So how, with all those cross-cultural experience, because I also, now, for example, in China, a lot of people prefer like using healing as well, because therapy, they would think about, I like there's something wrong with me if they use the word therapy. So from your cross-cultural experience, like, how do you define healing
Well,
and versus
again,
therapy?
healing, I mean, we have sound healing, we have all kinds of
Yeah.
music healing. It really is important. Words are important. And in fact, you need to talk to your audience to use the language that they use. So therapy does have a sense that something is wrong with you. In our country, therapy is becoming something that everybody needs it because the world's kind of crazy. And
Yes.
to me, it's about education. I see that education and therapy go hand in hand. You're re-educating yourself to be healthy. So healing is definitely something that is an inner kind of experience that you can't force people to change. They need to want to change themselves. And I think that's the way in therapy people come to it, because either they're forced to come or somebody needs them to change. But, change, we know, comes from within. And healing is I think it is a beautiful way to really look at how to take care of yourself, how to be healthy. Change comes from within, absolutely. And in the same thing in therapy, that people need to know that they want to change and that change can make a difference, and music can be part of the difference. So I do use different words. We don't say therapy in Africa. We say healing, but it's the same, and it's how it's presented, and that's really important. Yeah.
So as long as we remove, like, because sometimes it's the system we build, right? Whether people are forced into therapy, as long as we remove that part, they're essentially the same thing. It's therapists are there to facilitate that
Exactly.
inner healing to happen.
Yeah, and that's it. Even as a training as a music therapist, we have the skills to listen to people, to actively listen, to really determine sort of with the individuals what they need. That's where the community music therapy model comes in. We're not there as to tell people what to do, but more to listen and to work with them. And it's the whole world needs healing absolutely right now, and I think music is one of the solutions to help. I really believe that. And it's also finding the right music. You don't just put on new age music and hope people will change. That, and I think in that some of the differences is that music is preferred, and that's again finding preferred music that an individual will respond to, or a community. And don't put on certain music for me because it'll bring me down rather than bring me up. So
that humanity rather than like I think that's the question I constantly get asked. Like, for example, over the weekend I gave a workshop about like exploring our relationship with music, and then after the workshop there participants send me like they're like counselor, a school teacher who just want like can like so they asked me like is there a a list of songs that I can put on for my students so that they can relax or match their emotions. And that's a question I constantly get. And I think it's a total perspective shift, right? From like I create those it's so popular now, like with canned music, right? Canned music is like, oh, this music I put on this time for this situation, and boom, like everyone should like it. It's such an industrialized view of how we consume music. And I feel like as music therapists, we're being so much of no, like look at this human being in front of me, like what they need, what's their story, what's their whole person, and find what's within them and bring that out for healing or wherever they want to go. It's from the person rather than like, hey, let's just pop up a product like from this like
Yeah,
factory, and then
yeah, and I don't want to say, I don't want to, I think if you're a person who is intuitive, who knows how to actively listen to people, you don't have to be a therapist per se, depending on the level
Mhm.
of clinical work. You can be a teacher, you can be a nurse, you can be a chaplain, you can be anything, to use music in ways that are productive. And I always, I'm teaching a class in the fall, and I taught it last fall to young musicians who were not therapists, but it's how to use
Yeah.
your music in service to other people. It's without having the clinical training. And it's really
Mhm.
about assessing your audience. Who are you working with? What do they need? Rather than coming in with a menu and this is what you need, telling them, but actually having that kind of conversation. Again, therapists work on a deeper level, but other people can do music for health and healing. It's not, we don't have a corner on the market that other people are also, because there are not enough of us, for one thing. And there's not one way to use music. So I think sometimes we get very defensive and territorial. And I say, let go of that and just open it up and look at who are the people who want to use their music in service. And I say music with compassion. I'm
Mhm.
almost thinking that that's another field that we should develop.
Mm.
It's a compassionate music field, so that other people.
Compassion with music filled.
It's again just about caring for others with music rather than the therapy piece.
Mm.
There's so many ways to do this work, and yeah, so that's
Mm. Tell me more about that. Like, what do you like? How do you envision that compassion with music looks like?
well. First of all, you have to have compassion for yourself. Self-compassion. So being able to accept your strengths, your limitations, so that you're able to accept that in other people. As therapists, we're told or taught to be judgmental. That's really hard in life, not to be judgmental, but it also refers to ourselves, how to accept who we are as people so that we can accept other people as well.
Mhm.
And so that's the foundation, I would say, is that self-acceptance, that self-compassion. So then you can use that same way, non-judgmental, to its unconditional love, but which is
Love.
love. I think, that's not very clinical, but it's sort of the foundation. It's that care for another and that embrace.
Or maybe maybe it's like the Rogers, right? From
Yeah,
the person-centered therapy, he mentioned about the positive regard,
right, positive regard.
unconditional positive regard.
Yeah, and there's a field that is been around for a little bit while here called positive psychology, where we don't
Mhm.
focus on what's wrong with people, but we focus on what's right with people. And so again, it's are you an optimist or a pessimist? A positive
Mm.
psychology really doesn't look at the pathology as much as it does look at how to strength-based resiliency, really working on those areas that people um, um, have some strength in, and then
Mm.
focusing on that, and then also not ignoring the pathology, but really the focus
Mhm.
is on what's working rather than what's not working. So
Agree.
yeah,
And I feel that's what I feel a lot like during the training at Berkeley, that it's kind of the foundation, like it's like underlying string kind of in the program. Like I
we
just feel
work
it.
on abilities rather than disabilities.
Yes.
Another way of saying that, we work on
Yes.
what people can do rather than what they can't do. And that,
Mhm.
and music has a way of really bringing out the strength in people. You see it with individuals with Alzheimer's who really have
Mhm.
lost a lot of their memory, a lot of their cognition, but you put on a song that is familiar, and they boom. I mean, that's
They're alive.
the magic, and it's not magic, and it's because we're now understanding the brain. Don't ask me to explain
Yeah.
the brain, somebody else can do that, but the way that music is processed in the brain, is really about tapping into the emotional component. It bypasses all the cognition, goes right into how music can bring the best out in people. So,
have you seen like, COVID change anything, or like has an influence or redirect our field?
yeah. So as it comes to music therapy and COVID, certainly we see it with the telehealth, and the online video has really impacted how people, a lot of places still use telehealth as something that where it creates accessibility for others to come into a room, and it's effective, but I still think live music is most effective when working in music therapy. So I see the telehealth, I see COVID also affecting our mental health, especially with adolescents. There's a lot more need to provide services for individuals with for young people who really have been in isolation for the longest time and coming into the here and now. And so definitely I see music therapy working more in shifting towards mental health, which it already has been, but now there's a greater growth in that area, especially with children and adolescents, as a way to do that. Yeah, but also the technology. I think there's some positive aspects of telehealth as well, because today we are doing this podcast. I don't know if we would have done this years ago, but I know at Mass General Hospital in Boston, it's been very effective with individuals who can't leave their homes because of different kinds of disorders and disabilities, and they come in. And it does bring people together still. As a community, people have a place to go without having to leave their home. So and that how technology and music has really influenced music therapy as well. So
yeah, I see. It's a very interesting, like now, for example, I do both offline, like in person and online still, and I do see, like, as we become like accustomed to the online environment, our brain kind of like automatically start to fill in the information that was missing, and still feel that sense of connection. It's just so interesting.
And the connection is what, when we talk about music therapy, it's all about relationship and music.
Yeah. 1 second, let me mute this. Okay, got it. Yeah, exactly. And remember, you also there's a big part, kind of, you talk about, improvisation, right? Berkeley is kind of based on improvisation, and also how as music therapists we are trained to be prepared for the unprepared.
Yes, I can't take credit for that quote. That's a Kimberly Kerr quote. One of my colleagues. That's one of my colleagues. It's really about having confidence within yourself that you can step into any situation, whether it's a bedside hospital or a large group of elders in a nursing home setting, and that you have the strength and the capacity and the knowledge to assess immediately what's going on and then design a program. That's the being prepared to be unprepared. Sometimes, and that's the improvisation, the spontaneity, to be able to be spontaneous and be in the moment. And I think that's where mindfulness and presence come in, where you need to really focus on what's happening in the here and now. If you're thinking about what happened yesterday or tomorrow, you have to, get in your car and run around, you're not really present. And so that is connected to being prepared, is just being in the moment. And I think musically, it's the same thing. You have the resources within yourself to pull out music that can meet the needs of the individuals who is in front of you at the time. So I think that's also a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah. So before, as we prepare for the podcast, so in my community, I asked people about like what are you interested, what are you like want to get to know more about, and some member very interested about, okay, so how do I prepare for the unprepared? How do I gain this ability? Or want to ask you, how do you train your student to learn this, to
Well,
have
I
this
mean, it's not
capacity to.
immediate. It's not a magic bullet. It's not like a pill you take and then you're there. I mean, it's
Oh.
again, I mean, it's part of our natural process, as therapists, as people, we need to work on ourselves first so that we can be there for other people. So it's about developing. I mean, if you're looking for specific ways to do it, certainly learn a lot of music, build repertoire. Start putting playlists together that that make you feel good. And then you have it on your iPad or your device if you're working with someone. I'm talking to just about anybody, that you have a resource. I mean, that's the beauty of living today. The amazing amount of accessible music is unfathomable. I mean, when I was growing up, we had a piano and we'd sit around the piano and sing, and you'd buy a record and you'd listen to the record. But now the songs, so finding out what are the popular songs that children are listening to today, what are the songs that elders, if there's a formula that says if you're the music that you listen to between, I think, the ages of 18 and 27 are the music that's going to stay with you. I don't know if that's totally true, but that's some thought that that's the music when you end up in the nursing home or assisted living or retirement community. That's the music that you will reflect back on, because that was an age of aliveness, of youth, of development. So definitely developing repertoire, developing yourself as just getting strong, whether it means you going into therapy or talking to people about your strengths and your areas of limitation or your areas that you struggle with. But being able to be present and focused on another is really, and active listening skills is key. Being able to listen to others. So that's one way. I'm sure there's other ways to be unprepared, to be prepared.
To be prepared for them.
Unprepared. But again, it's that self-confidence. And again, musically, repertoire is big. Self-confidence is big. And allowing yourself to make mistakes. My God, if you try to be perfect, it's just not going to work. You need to be able to make mistakes and learn from, and to be vulnerable, I think is sometimes hard, but that's really sort of the key of growth, is allowing yourself to say, I really don't know what I'm doing, and to step into it and to know that that's okay, that you don't have to know all the time and be perfect, and letting go of any kind of perfection. Boy, that's the hardest, most challenging thing, is the perfectionism in music therapy. You got to let go of that. So
yeah, and for all the musician, right? Like when because you're also bringing music therapy to at Berkeley, all the other music students who are not necessarily going to music therapy major, but they're going to like film scoring, composition, performance, and like jazz music business. So how do you bring those like to them? Like, how do you share the music therapy mindset with them?
I mean, especially at a music school where it's so competitive, and there are people who are much more skilled than you are. I mean, you go to a
Always.
yeah. And
Always.
it's letting go of the competition, which I shift from competition to collaboration. It's really about what can I learn, and rather not going into that dark place of I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm doing, but being okay with where you are. And I think it's, again, that acceptance. I learned this from my mom, who lived to be 102, that you just accept the changes in your life, that acceptance is really key. It's I think the Dalai Lama talks about it. It's just a foundation of being able to accept where you are and not look back. I mean, and I'm not saying don't look for growth and have goals, but I think that we all have gifts to share. We all have something to give. And if you start thinking, well, I can't do that somebody else is doing it better, you lose yourself. So really work on finding what are the strengths that you have that you can make a difference. And that's sort of the mantra we talk about in these classes with students who are engineers and teachers. It's really everybody has something to give and to find out what your specific gift is. So everybody.
Yeah, that really it reminds me of like the during the supervision, like we always have feedback. Supervisor observe what we do and also like give feedback right after. And there's always like strengths, like what you see you're good at, and there are usually I notice like 2-3 strengths, and then one is it's not like, oh, you're so bad at this, but it's more like, okay, this is the area where you can grow, and this is how you can grow. Here are the steps. So I feel like that feedback is so important, like in the environment to support you to grow.
And if you're not open to that feedback, if you're so defended that nobody's going to tell me what to do, you shouldn't be there. I think, I'm still growing, I'm still learning, and I've been in the field, over 30 years, and I'm still looking to develop my skills. And you just have to know what you're good at and know what you're not good at, and how to get better. So,
that got me curious. So, Karen, what are you currently trying to expand into?
Well, I love the successful aging, because of my own place in society and my own place. I'm looking at how music can help people develop as they age successfully, how to keep music in people's lives. So I'm working with a colleague, Donna Chadwick, on the music life plan and the living will, which is really looking at how to help people as they journey into the unknown, that their music stays with them. So having ways and systems for playlists to travel with people as they travel into the next chapter of their lives. That's kind of where I'm at. Plus my own music. I am playing every weekend with a group of people. Just one of our singers is an ex-Broadway, retired Broadway actress, and we just do songs of the 40s and 50s and 30s and just sit around and just play. We will be performing at some point, but I just love making music with other people. It's one of my favorite things to do in life, is to sit and play.
So fun. I can imagine that.
So
wow.
That's where I'm going. And I think the power of music is being embraced more and more, and people are accepting music therapy as a training tool and as a clinical means. In hospitals, we see it more. Hospitals are embracing music therapy, and so there are more jobs that are opening up. And we need music therapists. For any of your listeners, come study music therapy at Berkeley or any college, because we need more of you who have the skills to use your music in service to others.
Yeah. Wow. My mind, like there's so many memories open up as you talk about how you are interacting with music, bringing like throughout life, and as like into the unknown, right? So my mind is like, wow, just in awe, like in that vision I see now. And indeed, we have a lot of listeners here who are interested, and they're like, so some are interested into explore music therapy as a profession, and what step can they take, and some others are love music and also wonder and trying different ways how to incorporate more into their life. So what would be your suggestion for these two types of people? Like if there's one thing they can do today.
Is play music. Just keep it alive. Seriously, is stay connected to your passion. I think that's what's important. Again, you don't have to be a music therapist to use music in service to other people. Find music that resonates for you. Build repertoire and really get yourself in situations where you're there to, I don't know, to build music and build music communities. And performance therapy is good. It again, understanding there's not just one way. Performance is also therapy and healing. And so finding ways
Performance is also therapy and healing.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
So how is that? Like explain that like to the audience. I know that. I feel that, but
yeah, if you look at the elements of what goes into making music, you get into sort of a flow is the best way that I can say. So finding that flow, getting out of your head and getting into the flow is the best way I would say, is using music and not overthinking, and just kind of finding music that resonates for you and for those around you. Start with your family. Make playlists for your family, and
make playlists for family.
Really talk to people, and don't be afraid to take some risks, make mistakes, fall off the cliff, but you can always get back up. And find a support system. I think that's a big one. I think this podcast is a way of bringing people together in
exactly,
and hopefully finding support from people of like mind who are interested in doing the same thing you're doing, and letting go of any judgment of others and of yourself.
Exactly. That's exactly what I hope for this podcast to be, to bring this community, to facilitate this space.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Karen.
I'm happy to be here. It's so great to talk to you.
Yes, always so happy to talk to you. 感谢你的收听，我们下一期不见不散。